Hello and welcome. My name is Lloyd Burrell. My mission is finding and sharing solutions and raising awareness so that we can all live a happy and healthy life in our electromagnetic world. Today I'm thrilled to have as my guest nutritional balancing practitioner Lewis Rowlands. Lewis has been doing awesome work on EMF sensitivity and nutrition for a number of years. I interviewed Lewis back in 2016. And then he reached out to me a couple of months back to say that he'd been achieving some very good results with his protocols and that he discovered some new EMF procedures that speed up healing. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So nutritional balancing, certainly, what it is exactly, how this program works, and there is a free version on his website which I've just been checking out, which is awesome. The insights and patterns that Lewis has been able to identify with regards to EMFs and EMF sensitivity. And just to be clear, Lewis' approach is it's not all about EMFs. We're going to start by talking about his background, and so you'll get a feeling for why he's doing this, but it's really relevant to anyone who's serious about improving their health. So Lewis Rowlands is based in Sheffield in the UK, and you can contact him through his website deephealingspace.com. That's all one word, deephealingspace.com. Lewis, welcome.
Hi Lloyd, thanks for having me.
It's good to have you on. It's good to have you on. So, nutritional balancing and your healing protocols, that's what I'd like to focus on. But first, so you've been on before, but if you could perhaps share your story with us, your story as a teenager, what you went through, if you could perhaps talk us through those experiences, which kind of led to what you're doing now, as I understand it.
No problem. So yeah, basically it first started off when I was around 14, 15. I remember it quite clearly actually. For me personally, I was smoking marijuana when I was on 14, 15, and all of a sudden I felt a disconnect from reality. Initially I thought it was kind of, depression, anxiety sort of thing. I was a very, very high achiever when I was younger. So I was a little bit apprehensive about going to my parents or something, telling them that I'm, depressed and anxious and that I feel disconnected from reality. I just thought that I could, work through it, or, I'll get over it, or I need to change some thinking patterns, etc., etc. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately for me, the conditions just started to get worse and worse and worse. I was on a very, very poor Western diet. I used to eat a lot of white bread, and I used to have, 2 to 3 ready meals per day. I did a lot of exercise, up to 10 hours a day, which was very intense. And basically my symptoms got worse and worse and worse. I had derealization, depersonalization, brain fog, skin conditions, chronic headaches, a tingling sensation on my skin. It's on my website somewhere. I got around 40 different symptoms. Unfortunately for me, I kept it quiet for quite a few years. Got into alcohol, got into drugs as a kind of escape, which made me feel temporarily better.
Yeah.
That went on till I was around 21. I also took a very, very strong steroid drug called Accutane when I was 18, which I later found out to be extremely dangerous. I took that for about 18 months, and that really, really, put me in a serious state. So around 21, I came across an article on the internet by a guy named Dr. Lawrence Wilson, and it was about brain fog, and it basically outlined all of the issues that I had that was going off in my brain. So I kind of thought it was a bit of a shining light for me, and he did something called a nutritional balancing program, and he talked about a lot of issues that I had. So I thought, I've struck gold kind of thing. I'm going to start the program. Little did I know, how incredibly sick I'd managed to get myself into. Usually what we find these days, and you've probably seen it as well, Lloyd, is that when people are under stress, the body does actually a very, very good job at keeping itself alive and keeping itself moving. And a lot of people will switch into a chronic fight or flight response, which I believe that I was in chronically for quite a few years. So although I was feeling incredibly ill and not myself, I did have energy to go through my days, and I could go out and you know, drink and do exercise and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But what the program did, it basically removed the scaffolding that I'd put up around myself to keep myself going, and the inner exhaustion and fatigue and all the layers of adaptions that I had built up around myself started to show themselves. So I basically collapsed. I've never ever been so fatigued in my life. You know, the slightest thing would kind of put me into a shock, you know, a door slamming or anything like that, because my adrenal glands were just so burnt out. So I ended up leaving and I went to Thailand for a year to try and heal.
Mm-hmm.
And it was around 1.5 years into my healing program when I ended up buying a laptop computer, an Apple MacBook, which I'm sure you know is really bad for EMF.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily for me, I'd heard about EMFs before, but I thought, I just thought, surely I haven't got EMF as well. I mean, that would be a horrible, that's kind of the nail in the coffin sort of thing. Turns out, yeah, I was very, very severely affected by EMFs. And, you know, one thing led to another in Thailand. I got a flat and I was on the top floor of a flat and, you know, found out that I was actually living just underneath a giant phone mast. So, yeah, basically when I got this computer in Thailand, all of a sudden I started getting very big tingling sensations, burning sensations on my skin, insomnia, you know, all the kind of trademark things that people with EMF get, you know, rashes on my skin, etc., etc. And yeah, basically what the program had done is, although I was healing, I improved brain fog, I improved energy, but kind of a new layer came up, and it was the EMF layer that I just couldn't really feel as much as I could do now.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I bought this computer, and the computer was like a catalyst for me to really feel these symptoms that was kind of hidden beneath other symptoms that I had.
Uh-huh.
So all of a sudden I became aware of how extremely sensitive I was to EMF, and I wasn't really moving forwards in my healing program because of the EMFs was just causing so much stress on my body. So I ended up sleeping in a Faraday cage for about 8 months in Thailand. It was a solid metal box. It was probably one of the most lowest points of my life. But luckily for me, that allowed me to go through deeper detox and deeper layers of adaptions to finally kind of get over EMF sensitivity. So here I am, you know, it's a much longer story. I do have a YouTube video called Healing EMF from the Inside, and I think where I really go much deeper into that. Because I've, you know, these 10 years really have been healing and sick, so it's way more deeper that I haven't really got time to go into too much.
Yes.
Yeah, 6 years later down the line, I have come from extreme derealization and depersonalization, extreme EMF sensitivity where I couldn't be near a phone at one point, to, yeah, I've got 3 businesses. I help hundreds of people, you know, hundreds of people around the world. My YouTube channel goes around to thousands and thousands of people. I have energy, and I do not feel EMF sensitivity in the slightest. It doesn't really matter where I go. It's just something that I'm very, very fortunate is not on my mind anymore, because, you know, I do say to people, you know, out of everything that I used to have, having EMF sensitivity was up there with the top 3 things. You know, insomnia was probably number 1, because that is absolutely horrible to have. But when you've got EMF sensitivity, you know what it's like. It is a 24/7 problem.
Yes.
And unfortunately, it is getting worse and worse and worse due to the fact of people's health is deteriorating, I've found in general, and the increase of radiation is just skyrocketing.
Yes. So yeah, so that story is one that we don't hear very often, certainly not on my podcast, because it's, you know, kind of a young, I don't like categorizing things, but it's a kind of a young people's story, and that's why it's important for people to hear that, because that is a story which, you know, I'm sure if you've not lived it, then you've seen it, you've observed it, or you can guess that it's happening to somebody you know, or the friend of somebody you know, or because there's so many young people seem to be trapped in this spiral, you know, of alcohol, drugs, and perhaps, you know, overcompensating with the sport, and, you know, looking for any means of escape they can. having this poor nutrition, being in this society where we are overly reliant on these technologies, which are massive toxins in so many different ways, just not on the EMF electromagnetic field level, but digital toxins in terms of what they're doing to our body, our attention span, and so on. So yeah, so you went from being deeply sick to deep healing, which was another kind of sickness, because that's the thing to understand as well, is that when you do go into, when you are your health is in such a poor state, that when you do start to heal, that you don't immediately feel better. That is
For sure.
really key. That is really key.
That's a really key point, and I think it's one of the things that really puts people off deep healing. Luckily for me, that I did my research and stuff, and I was kind of delving deeply into this. But yeah, in general, when people do start a deep healing program, they do actually feel worse off, and it's a real problem. And it is because of the fight or flight response, but a lot of it is because of the toxins that have been built up inside the body. Physical toxins. What goes in must come out, and if you're full of mercury, if you're full of arsenic, if you're full of copper, which usually people are if they've got EMF sensitivity, that has to come out at some point. And when it's running around the blood, it usually causes flare-ups. You've also got issues of, if you're living on a Western diet for so many years, the body has figured out a way to convert that into energy. So when you have on a new diet, which is usually low on carbohydrates, the body has to go through, difficult processes trying to figure out new ways of finding energy. So that's another issue. And yeah, and then there's the mental trauma as well, which needs to be dealt with. A lot of people have traumas from the past. It could be beatings, it could be rapes, it could be trauma just from living in society. Actually can be a trauma these days for some people. And luckily the nutritional balancing program really helps with traumas as well, because usually what happens is the body and the brain and the universe in a way has already figured out a way for us to deal with traumas. And if you've got really healthy, strong nutrition in general, the trauma will kind of resolve itself on its own. Usually you got to speak to some people, but it's about kind of giving the body what it was designed to have in terms of lifestyle and diet. And what you'll generally find is that these old traumas that a lot of people have been trying to sort out for years and years and years on a mental level can't really get resolved until the body's adaptive deep energy gets resolved. And when that's resolved, then these deep traumas will come out of the system. It's very interesting.
Yeah. So it's about, the as you say, the body, the brain, and the universe has this intrinsic intelligence, and we don't have to really do that much. We do have to put a bit of work in, but compared to the work that the body, the brain, and the universe is doing, we've got kind of the easy part of the deal, although it doesn't feel like it. So really what we're doing is just creating conditions for the body, the brain, the universe, for this intrinsic intelligence to do its magic. And it can't do its magic if we're just chock full of toxins, and we're running on empty, and we've got the fight or flight, which is just full on. And the body is just all the time doing this amazing job. It's this amazing intelligence. It's amazingly adaptive, and I don't think we give it we don't acknowledge that enough. And it's like every day the body, like, the show must go on. The show must go on. And we don't realize what's going on in the background to make the show go on. And sometimes we're really purging deeply into any energy stores, which it shouldn't, just to make the show go on. So let's talk about nutritional balancing, if we can, which makes the show go on a lot easier. But it takes time, it takes effort. So perhaps you mentioned that you learned this from reading on a website from Dr. Lawrence Wilson, which we talked about before with other guests. So his work is outstanding, groundbreaking. I guess those are two adjectives we could use. So could you explain to us, so what is this nutritional balancing, please?
Yeah, it's a really fascinating program. Basically, it's been developed around 40 years ago by a really brilliant guy named Dr. Paul Eck. he started looking into hair mineral analysis. He started looking into the stress response. And he was really an avid researcher. He initially started the nutritional balancing program for athletes, but after a while he started to realize that actually most people are pretty burnt out, and they actually needed a healing program just to heal themselves from the toxins and various biochemical imbalances that most people have got today. So he basically set up this program. It's called a nutritional balancing program, where he uses hair mineral analysis as a testing method. And basically what he does is he's found out various different patterns. If you look at a hair analysis test, the amount of information that you can actually get from that when you know how to read them is outstanding. You can see a person's metabolism, you can see a person's fight or flight response, you can see whether a person has a lifestyle stress, you can see whether a person has an internal mental stress, whether they feel stuck, whether they feel withdrawn, how well their adaptive energy is. You can see all the toxic metal readings. So really you can actually get a really in-depth blueprint of the body. And he's kind of created this program that has a look at these patterns and tests, and basically the program will allow a person to rebalance themselves, basically. And what's happened over time is, through looking at hundreds of thousands of these tests, Paul Ecker's kind of refined his nutritional balancing program. He died a few years back. I'm not sure, I think around 20 years ago. And Dr. Wilson was basically an apprentice of his, and he kind of carried on the nutritional balancing program, and he's added more things to it, removed some things. And I think what separates nutritional balancing out from a lot of other healing modalities is probably two main things. The first thing is that he uses the hair mineral analysis, and I think that's really good for any healing practitioner to use kind of a scientific modality to see exactly what's going on inside the body. I'll give you a quick example. There is two patterns on a hair analysis. One's called a 4 lows pattern, and one's called a 3 lows pattern. And basically, if you was to get two people together side by side that has a 3 lows and one has a 4 lows, and you ask them questions, the symptoms would be pretty much the same. However, if you was to give a 4 lows person a 3 lows program, they would actually get worse. And if you was to give a 3 lows person a 4 lows program, they would also get worse as well. So if you're going into a holistic practitioner without any of these tests, them two people would probably be given the same advice, and unfortunately one would get worse. which is that's one amazing thing in the nutrition balancing program. The other thing is that he's really understood the needs of the modern world. So just quickly going back to what you were saying before about the body and the universe, the universe and the earth and nature had it figured out already for us a few thousand years back, to be fair. We was living in tribes between 30 and 50 people, and every single day we was eating high quality nutrient dense food. We was drinking high quality spring water. We was out in nature breathing fresh air. We used to go to bed when it was dark because we couldn't see at night. We would sit around the fires, we would tell stories, we would dance, we would do rituals. We would be part of a unit where every single person within that tribe relied on each other. And this is another nutrient actually of human health, is being in a community, is sharing projects with people. I mean, It's not just about healing, it's about these other intrinsic things that humans have because we're social creatures, and that's one of the other issues actually that's a problem in today's world. But what Dr. Wilson has done is he understands that, of course, but he's realized that the modern day is very, very much different to what it was 10,000 years back. We have toxins in the world, we have pollution, we have this kind of victim mentality where we give our power away to governments and people that are just not really in our circle. So what's happened is we've got this imbalance, and the best way to describe balance is we use the Chinese way of describing balance, which is yin and yang, which is just talking about positive and negative. So we say that the world today is too yinly out of balance. So yin is expanded, it's up in your head, it's cold, it's rushing around. That's kind of what yin's all about. So kind of victim mentality where people don't take full responsibility for themselves. That's a yin type of thinking. Adrenal fatigue is yin because it makes the body cold. You know, people get candida, which is a cold, white, yin problem. Sugar and carbohydrates, which is sugary and chaotic and up in the hair, that's really yin. You know, fruit is really in. So what is realized is that we actually need to get more yang, and this is what a lot of healing modalities are unaware of, and I personally believe it's the problem, the biggest problem. So actually what we do is when we make the body more yang using the nutritional balancing program, eating root vegetables, doing coffee enemas, doing sauna therapy, that actually creates this balance where we're going from the opposite, and making a person more yang in Chinese medicine terms. And we find that actually is a key component in healing, because there's a lot of healing modalities out there that in theory sound really good. So, you know, I'll give you an example. Fasting, for example. Now, fasting is actually very, very yin. You know, you're not, it's very expanded kind of energy. If you was living 10,000 years ago in India in a cave where it was red hot every day and you was pretty young, you know, and you're quite grounded to the earth, doing something like fasting is probably a good thing because it's making the body more yin. But when you attach a yin thing onto a yin body, it doesn't work too well. And that's what we've found. You know, you get loads of different things like that. You know, a lot of juicing, for example, is really yin. You know, watery, sugary fruit. In theory, it sounds good, but when you actually put yin and yin together, it actually, you know, makes a person worse. The same with fruitarianism. You know, fruits are really high sugar, you know, and they're off the ground, really super yin. So we find actually that the worst people that come to me actually come from like fruitarian backgrounds or like breatharianism or all that stupid, you know, the breatharian is, I mean, whoever thought that it's a good idea to not eat anything at all, it's quite astounding. But you can, you know, there's some good arguments in terms of maybe that's our evolutionary path. But in the modern day 21st century, in general, we're too yin, and we need to get more yang. And basically, that's what the nutritional balancing program does, and it really, really works.
Yeah, and so this program. It's an amazing analysis, really, of you know who we are, what we are, you know, our composition, and it gives us these amazing insights, doesn't it? And it's very it's very sophisticated. That's what I'm hearing. And just a word on the science, because people are always saying, well, yeah, but you know, what science is there on this? So you're saying there's thousands of case studies being done by Dr. Paul Eck and Dr. Lawrence Wilson. So people that are interested in the science, you know, what can you say to that? You know, what science is there and where can they learn about this science?
Yeah, so hair mineral analysis has been used for quite a long time. I think it was first developed in the 40s and 50s to test soil, etc. And it's a very, very precise way of testing minerals. Basically, minerals are put into a machine. The machine heats up the minerals to a point where it starts burning, and very, very, very precise lasers will actually pick up on the colours of the colours that the minerals make when they've burnt at high temperatures, and they will basically create percentages of the amount of minerals in the, you know, that was put into the machine. It's called what's it called? Spectroscopy.
Yes.
Something along those lines.
Yes.
And yeah, and it's what we found with hair mineral analysis is that you actually have got to be pretty careful about how the test's done. So there's a lot of hair mineral analysis labs out there that, for example, they bleach the hair, and what Dr. Eck and Dr. Wilson have found is that actually that's not a good way of doing it. You need to find a laboratory that do not bleach the hair or wash the hair. So far we can only recommend two. One's called ARL Analytical Labs in Phoenix, Arizona, and there's another one called Trace Elements. I use ARL because that's what Dr. Wilson uses. And unfortunately, hair mineral analysis has been given a bad rap over the years. If you look at the studies where people are against hair mineral analysis, if you look at actually how they've been done, you'll realize the reason why the person doing the test has actually come to a decision whereby they think hair mineral analysis is not a good way of testing. You know, one famous example is a guy who cut a sample of his daughter's hair. You know, when you think about it, you know, his daughter's hair was probably around 2 foot long, and he chopped that 2 foot long hair into chunks, you know, into inch long sections, and sent them around to different labs. And he argued that the labs came back with different results. Well, they're going to come back from different results because that hair, that 2 foot hair, is a timeline of that person. You know, but this managed to get through into some giant scientific journal, and you just think to yourself, how has that managed to happen? You know, what we do is we take about half an inch to an inch of hair from the root, from the scalp, so you get, you know, the last 3 months, and you know, that's what you want to be testing. You know, there's times when I have a client, for example, who's going through some really difficult times, and we sometimes will get hair analysis from them every month, and they've, you know, you can see tiny variations in the hair analysis, and it's because it's very, very fresh, if that makes sense. You know, so you know, the accuracy is unbelievable. Another interesting thing that happens with the hair analysis is that I am so confident about the accuracy of the hair analysis tests, is that when I speak to a client, I will say, you are feeling like this, aren't you? Or you have this issue, you have this lifestyle stress, you know, and I will get it right 100% of the time, because I am so confident of how accurate these hair analysis results are. I don't even have to ask the client anymore whether they're experiencing this. I know 100% this is what they're experiencing. So I'll say to them, this is what you're experiencing, and they're like, yeah, how did you know that? I'm like, well, I'm looking at the test, it's extremely accurate. You know, but the problem is these days is that, you know, people are getting tests from different labs, and they're getting skewed results, and unfortunately it puts sometimes a bit of a bad rap on the community. But I've found that actually recently, because there've been so many amazing results from the Nutritional Balancing program, that people are really starting to come round to the power of hair mineral analysis now, and it's really, really nice to see.
Yes. Yeah, I think there is definitely a growing awareness of this, and obviously if you're getting results, and that's the thing, and so that's what I have to ask you. You know, are you getting results? You know, what is in terms of, you know, are you dealing with people that have got EMF sensitivity, and what sort of results are you getting? You know, what sort of if you could put a percentage on it, you know, what's your success rate?
So I suppose the interesting thing about me, you know, you've probably been exposed to a lot more people than I have, but I kind of feel that not that many people actually overcome EMF sensitivity from the inside. I think they do a really good job at reducing the radiation, so they don't feel it as much. But I don't think there's that many. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but there's that many people that actually have had it severely and actually now don't even think about it whatsoever. Not only the EMF symptoms, but all of their other symptoms as well. So I generally find that my YouTube videos get quite a lot of response. So I do get a lot of emails from people wanting to start the program, which is interesting. So what we find in general is that when I get hair analysis tests, there's a few things on the hair analysis test that blatantly stand out for me, for anyone that's got EMF sensitivity.
Yeah.
Now, the main one is actually something called copper imbalance, or a copper toxicity. I have not come across any hair analysis test so far from anyone that's got EMF sensitivity that doesn't have what we call copper imbalance.
Yes.
So copper imbalance is actually an extremely common issue today. And in simple terms, what happens when the body is under stress is that the adrenal glands will use up all of the sedative minerals that the body uses to deal with stress. And these are calcium, magnesium, sodium, zinc, potassium, etc. And what happens is that the copper works together in the body as twins, you know, like yin and yang. Copper tends to be more yin, and zinc, which is its kind of opposite, the kind of twins, that's more yang. And the zinc, unfortunately, gets massively reduced from most people these days, especially when you're under a lot of stress, because the body uses zinc to deal with stress. Also, zinc is very, very much lacking today in people's diets. You know, a vegan and vegetarian diet, for example, unfortunately increases copper toxicity. You know, not a lot of people are eating good quality meat, which is very, very high in zinc. Other issues are when the adrenal glands start to deplete, you'll get things like liver toxicity. There is certain enzymes within the liver that bind to copper. So these are not getting produced as much because the liver is toxic. So that increases copper toxicity. And it's a very, very big epidemic, in my opinion. And one of the problems is that copper is actually extremely hard. Copper toxicity is extremely hard to detect. If you used to get a blood test, I'm pretty sure that the copper level would come back as normal. And even on a hair mineral analysis test, we you know, it's not there on the test. You can't see it. You know, your copper's really high. Basically, what happens when you got copper toxicity is that the body's copper level increases quite dramatically. But what it does is it stores copper deep inside the cells. So you've got to go down to a cellular level to actually see the issues. The other issue is that copper is stored in many different areas of the body. It's stored in the liver, it's stored in the brain, it tends to accumulate in the brain, in the liver, in tissues. So if you was actually wanting to get a full copper toxicity test, you would actually have to take a biopsy of every tissue within the body, and that's obviously impossible to do. You know, so hair mineral analysis is, in my opinion, the best way of seeing whether a person's got copper toxicity.
Okay, so so the copper imbalance that is like nearly always, you're saying. Any other patterns, you know, for in terms of people that have got this, you know, EMF sensitivity or EMF intolerance syndrome or electrical hypersensitivity, whatever you want to call it. But so any other patterns that you can observe in this category of people?
Yeah, so the main one is copper, obviously. You know, copper's a highly conductive, conductor of electricity. So it basically, you know, when you're high in copper, it basically turns you into a giant antenna. The other things are people have always got aluminium toxicity. Again, aluminium and electricity work hand in hand. That also creates an antenna for the body. We also find that people have got a low sodium to potassium ratio. Sodium and potassium are the body's electrical minerals. It's what the body uses to send electrical signals down the body. Almost always the sodium potassium ratio is out of balance in one way or another. So, you know, sodium's high inside the cells and potassium's low outside the cells. Other things are calcium tends to be very high. So basically what that does is that's called a calcium shell. So that means that the body's cells have become calcified. So the EMF waves struggle to actually permeate the cells. So like number one is always copper toxicity. That's kind of every single time. And what we generally find is when the copper's coming out of the body, a person's EMF sensitivity will increase temporarily, and then actually once it's been released from the body, their sensitivity will decrease. I would say the second thing that you generally see is aluminium. That's 90% of the time that's there as well. Also, a person, you know, if you've got copper toxicity and aluminium toxicity, you're also going to be suffering from like mercury, nickel, arsenic, lead in various forms. Just because, you know, when you've got them two at the top, that's a clear sign that the body's really, really struggling to kind of deal with toxicity. So, you know, when you got mercury toxicity, that's just causing massive amounts of stress in the body, and lead and arsenic, etc. But in terms of EMF sensitive individuals, you know, the third thing is usually calcium shell, also magnesium shell. So the calcium's high, that causes cell impermeability. And then you get things like the sodium potassium is out of balance as well. So they're the main four really for people who've got EMF sensitivity. Usually people have always got two of them.
Mm.
And like I say, I've never actually seen anyone that's not got copper imbalance when they got EMF sensitivity. So I think that's really something to be aware of. And I've looked at hundreds of these tests from EMF sensitive individuals. So that's very, very interesting. And
Okay.
and I found when the copper is balanced, that's when their EMF sensitivity disappears.
Right. So yeah, so it is complex, and that's why it's best to have a practitioner like Lewis to walk you through this, to hold your hand. I want to ask you about, because you in the email you sent me, you spoke about some new EMF procedures that speed up healing. So I want to ask you about that. But first, I want to ask if you can just give me, because I know it's on your website, your whole thing, and that's really. That is awesome that you've put the information out there so that people can get all this information. And there is a lot of information on your website, I know. But perhaps you could just give us an overview of what your program, for somebody who's struggling, around EMS, who's got this sensitivity, who's got these symptoms around EMS. Perhaps you could just give an overview of what your protocol entails.
Yeah, so as you've already seen, we do give a free protocol on our website and also my YouTube channel. I think there's around 500 videos on there now. So we're not trying to get money out of people like a lot of people are fearful of when they're trying to find a practitioner to help them. We really want to get the information out there as much as possible. So basically, the program consists of a few things. We're always adding to it pretty much every month. The main one really is the diet. So our diet consists of a yang diet, like I spoke about earlier on. So it's very much consists of a diet high in cooked vegetables. We find that more yang, root vegetables, some protein, some meat, a little bit of carbohydrates if you can handle them. So we like blue corn tortilla chips are really useful. Millet, quinoa, all that sort of stuff. We tend to get people to stay away from things that we've talked about as being yin. So things like fruit is very yin, sweets, sugar, often some fermented foods we find to be very yin. We try and tend to get people to stay away from things that are irritable these days. So even like cow's dairy tends to be quite irritable to people. Wheat, some good quality sea salt. That's the general gist of it.
So that is to take. It's not to avoid the sea salt. That is to take, isn't it?
Yeah, that is to take. Yeah. We it's very, 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 very good to get some good quality sea salt in there. We do have some brands on our website and stuff that we find to be really useful. Obviously, the diet goes way, way more in depth than that.
Yes.
But that's the general gist of it.
Okay.
Then we recommend people to have plenty of water. The recommended water that we provide, we ask people to have is spring water or carbon filtered tap water. That's our recommendation. Then you move on to supplementation. So we generally find that people today have to have extra supplementation because we find that people's nourishment is so poor that they need some added stuff. Even organic food these days is just not as nutrient dense as what it was if you would find it in the wild. So we look at a hair analysis test and we will give people some supplement recommendations to take. There is some supplement recommendations on the free program that we are quite comfortable to giving people generally, but when people get a hair analysis test, we will go even deeper into the supplements based on the patterns on the hair analysis test. So the supplements do a few things. There's some supplements for detoxification, there's some supplements for balancing out the oxidation rate, some supplements for reducing copper toxicity, some for increasing nutrition, etc. Then we go on to detox protocols. So one of our main detox protocols is coffee enemas. We find that to be a very yang healing modality. Coffee is very good at stimulating bile and stimulating the liver, and we find that the liver is really, really struggling for people with EMF sensitivity. We also do near infrared saunas, but I'm careful with people that are suffering from EMF. I'm not just an EMF practitioner. I'll work with hundreds and hundreds of people who've got various different degrees of issues. The near infrared sauna, we find if you're using near infrared, the frequency, the EMF is actually much, much lower. I do talk to people about how they can create a very, very low EMF sauna to work from. There was a guy who has some YouTube videos on how to create basically an EMF-free near-infrared sauna on YouTube, which is super helpful for my clients. So I send them to that. So obviously detoxification is all about.
So sorry, just to if I can interject on that. So we go on YouTube and we put how to create a low EMF sauna, and we'll find that video.
Yeah, I can't remember the guy's name.
Or maybe it's on your website.
It's not on my website at the moment, but if you type in on YouTube how to create a low EMF near infrared sauna, or testing a low near infrared sauna,
right,
it will come up.
Yeah.
I don't have it on me at the moment. I'm trying to think of the guy's name because he's quite well known in the EMF sphere.
Mm-hmm.
But it's if people want to know, just send me an email.
Yeah.
Lewis@deephealingspace.com, and I'll send you that link, but I don't know it off the top of my head at the moment.
Okay. So so you were saying, and then detox, the fifth one.
Yeah. So detox is all about getting the toxins out of the system. Coffee enemas are great at stimulating the bile. The near infrared sauna is great. If you're sweating, it really sucks out the toxins from your body. So that's an excellent thing. We also recommend some meditation. The meditation that we recommend is called the pushing down exercise. So it's basically, in simple terms, we tell people to lie down, relax, focus on the feet, because that's grounding. It keeps people kind of focused on the earth. Most people who've got EMF sensitivity are just too ungrounded.
Mm-hmm.
You start to slow down the thinking. A lot of people, what's interesting is that copper is used by the brain to make the brain hyperstimulated. So most people who've got EMF sensitivity think way, way, way too much. And a lot of it actually is because copper is kind of driving that person to think even more. So what we found actually is that when you do meditation, the brain has no use for the copper anymore, because it was using it to keep itself thinking. It's a stimulating kind of mineral. So the copper actually gets detoxed from the brain in meditation. We also do some more esoteric things in the pushing down exercise, whereby we're bringing kind of orgone energy, chi energy into the body, which is very, very healing as well. You don't have to believe in that stuff for it to work, which is interesting, which is really powerful. So you just got to do it, basically. Then we've got we've got things like reflexology, which is very, very powerful. People don't realize how powerful it is. Working on the feet, grounding a person, working on the meridians, stimulating different organs, etc., etc. We tell people to sort out their lifestyle, so just take things slowly. If people are running around these days, we think that humans are robots. We're not. We're just like an animal. You don't see cats and dogs and lions and elephants running around mad all day doing this, that, and the other. So lifestyle's a big part of healing.
Yes.
And then we can talk with, we talk about extra things that added onto the program. So chiropractic care is usually really good. There is an exercise that we recommend called the spinal twist, which just helps a person unwind the spine, because the spines usually have some twists and turns in them which stop healing. So chiropractic care we find is really useful. And then we've added new things actually on that really help EMF sufferers. They help people even if you don't have EMF sensitivity. But one of them I spoke about in our previous talk, and that's called a kelp wrap. It's basically, we make a kelp paste out of like cornstarch and water and some kelp powder, and that's we stick that onto the body. And kelp's got some really amazing minerals inside, especially things like iodine, which most people with EMF sensitivity are really low in. The thyroid gland really struggles with people with EMF sensitivity because it's full of bromine and chlorine, and it's low in iodine. So this really pushes a lot of minerals into the body for EMF individuals. We've also found a new procedure which is very much similar to the kelp wrap. It's called a salt wrap. So it's pretty much the same idea, but instead of using kelp, you use salt. Again, it's just really, really helps people with EMF sensitivity.
Yeah.
And then depending on a person, depends on kind of other things that I can, aid them with. They might need counselling, they might need trauma release, they might need to go and do some deep tissue work, etc., etc. But that's something more personal that we would work with together based on their past experiences.
Yes, well, that's fantastic. Great general advice, obviously, because that's the whole point of this nutritional balancing, is that we're really tailoring it to the individual. So we have to stress that, because you've given some, really fantastic tips. for anybody, it's not about EMF sensitivity. But we've not talked about EMFs at all in that list, but we can talk about that, and obviously that adds on. We've talked about that so many times in terms of your exposures. I don't think we really particularly need to go there today.
No, I mean,
but,
yeah, if you've got EMF sensitivity, you need to get you need to get protected in terms of your bed space, your house wire and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I suppose that's everyone who's listening to this already probably knows about
not
that.
everybody knows it, but
well, no,
I would
that's true.
encourage
Yeah.
them to perhaps. I don't particularly want, because honestly, the information you share, I don't particularly want to go into that too much, because there's other questions I just want to highlight. What in what you just said is one super important. There's lots of really, in fact, it's all important what you just said. But I'm particularly drawing people's attention to maybe things they're not thinking about, like the meditation, and like what you said about grounding. And I say, if I could say that 50 times, then I would, because that is something that I see in the clients that I work with, is that people are just not grounded, and people are too much in their head. And this is one of my failings, or it was, perhaps still is, or it's certainly less. That and we are, and I imagine that was adding to yours as well, because when you've got that kind of curious mind where you want to understand everything. And this is a very common trait I find in the people that I work with, is they want to understand everything. But the thing is, you need to let go of that and just trust, trust your body, trust the universe, and just let go of that. Because, when you can let go of the detail and just, know that this will work, and know that you will heal, and just surrender to this, this higher power, which is another aspect, but which you're in the meditation and what you're saying about these esoteric things. And for me, this is important, and this is kind of more advanced things. So it's perhaps not things you're doing at the beginning, but you do these kind of easier things, easier in terms of like drinking and eating and stuff. But when you're sort of looking at these esoteric things, then it does require a certain mindset. And I just want to ask you, what, because you mentioned orgone energy, so working with Chi energy, but working with orgone energy, so how does that work?
Well, no, it's just describing this energy that a lot of kind of indigenous people talk about. You hear about in Christianity, hear about in Buddhism. It's this. In fact, they've even tested it in quantum physics. It's called quantum mesh. But people refer to it as chi. People in Japan, I think, refer to it as orgone energy. Prana, ki energy. Yes. It's the energy of the universe. If you believe in God, it's the energy of God. If you just believe in love, it's the energy of love.
Yes.
It binds everything. If you want to look in terms of scientific, you can see it in quantum physics. It's called quantum mesh. It's this ether that permeates through everything. It's the love of God. And when you bring that into the body, everything has it. The tree, every living being has this. It creates life. It is the intelligence of life that binds everything together. And this energy, what you push down. It's a visualization, and you can feel the energy. I can feel the energy now to a point whereby it actually realigns my structure. It's got to a point for me now. I've been doing this for 6 years. That this is deep stuff. I mean, I can sit next to someone and I can push this energy so far down that I will actually bring out a trauma release, or I'll bring out an experience with God in a person sat next to me. I mean, this is deep stuff for me that I don't really speak about too much, because it kind of freaks people out. But it's a real thing, and
So you're saying you can bring out a trauma release. This is so in a client you're working with. Is that what you're saying?
It can be a client I'm working with, or it can just be a person that I'm doing. I can meet a person in the street. If that person's ready to be healed, I can actually bring out healing within them just from the energy work I've done on myself for 6 years. And this all happened by chance. This is not anything that I kind of looked into myself. It just happened because Dr. Wilson says, well, do this. It makes you're going to heal better. And I did it every day for 20 minutes, an hour, 2 hours per day, and it creates this really powerful kind of energy that's really healing, and it's just something that I really wish people would kind of know a little bit. Even if you don't feel like you believe in God, everyone believes in love, you know, and
Yes.
just imagine it to be the power of love, because
Yes.
it really is that. And yeah, I mean, you know, I can actually measure it. There's some scientific measurements, and you can connect it to my finger, and I'll push the energy down, and you'll see the dial move upwards, because there's energy moving through my body. It's quite interesting.
So obviously this is subtle energy, and
Subtle energy. It's a
yeah, it
subtle,
is.
it's a subtle being that everyone has. You know, you hear it. You know, if you want to look into chakras, you know, it's the same thing as the chakras. It's even in Christianity. If you look back into Christianity, it's in
Yeah,
every major world religion.
right.
This idea of a finer being, the being of light. You know, the halo around Jesus' head. You know, Buddha's amazing, energetic. You know, it's there, and it's just waiting for people to just take
Yes.
on board and use.
Yes. And this is not like you start your program today and tomorrow you're going to start experiencing this. This is like after years of doing all this stuff, of changing your diet, of doing the detox, of drinking the right water, of working on the meditation, of doing, you know, certain other things. Maybe it's the reflexology, maybe it's the chiropractor, of doing all these things, of working on yourself, of working with other people. And then it's a higher state of evolvement, is it not? You know, you're of a
For sure.
spiritual evolution, and
Yeah. I mean,
it's a place you get to when you've done all this, and it's not even so. It's like that for you, what you're experiencing, what you've described, but then for somebody else, it's going to be something else, and it's not even as if you're seeking that thing. It's just something that happens.
it's a byproduct of giving the body what it needs in the 21st century. This should have been a natural process if you was living in what nature provided, in what God provided, if you want to talk about it like that, or what the universe provided. What Dr. Wilson has managed to recreate. I mean, this is not an EMF program. You know, it's not a depression program. It's not an anxiety program, although they will improve. This is actually a human evolution development program, and if you start this, you will begin to evolve the human body as it was designed to evolve. I mean, this is pretty intense, deep stuff, but this is what the nutritional balancing program is all about, and this is why people are raving about it, because it does this stuff. Unfortunately, you know, if you know, 6 years ago when I first started this, I can guarantee you now the first 3 years was nothing like that.
Yes.
It was very, very intense, and I had to go through horrible experiences and retracing traumas and just intense fatigue, and that's what people need to realize, is that this is not, we stop thinking that we live in a quick fix society. It's not about that. You know, I say to my clients, you are trying to heal and fix arguably the most complex thing in the universe, but you've not only got to fix it, you've got to live in it at the same time. You know, it's like this amazing mansion that you've got that's really decrepit and it's falling to pieces, but you've got to like live in the mansion but fix it at the same time. You know, so you know, don't think this is an overnight success, but usually what we find is that you will get improvement, you'll get improvement. It might feel like 2 steps forwards, 1 step back, because, you know, when the body's got energy, it starts to detox, and then you feel like you're moving backwards. In reality, you're moving forwards. But that's what it is, and it's a slow progress of feeling better, until you're at my stage 6 years down the line, where, you know, you don't just feel better anymore, you've actually got certain abilities that it makes you realize, wow, you know, as a society, as a population, why is this being kept under wraps? It's like this is something very, very sinister going off, unfortunately. And when you get to my level, that becomes really poignant, and it just gives you that drive to just help as many people as possible. And that's why we give away as much things as we can for free.
Yeah. So we're running out of time here, but if you could just remind people where they can find out more about what you do.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Lewis Rowlands. So if you want to send me an email, please send me an email at Lewis, Lewis, deephealingspace.com. You can also check out my website. I work with an American practitioner called Luke Pryor. Our website is www.deephealingspace.com. You can send me an email on that. You can get the free program on there, which is just a generalized program. Obviously, if you work with me, it gets way, way more in depth. All my YouTube channel is on that website. But if you want to check me out on YouTube, just type in Deep Healing Space or type in Lewis Rowlands, Rowlands, and there's a plethora of videos on there. I think we're around 450 or something like that. I do have a members area on my website with extra videos on if that's something you're interested in. But in general, I'd say if you're interested in what I've been saying, check out my videos and just get to understand me a little bit, and just, you know, I think people can kind of see my how genuine I am. I speak from the heart quite a lot. And think about doing a nutrition balancing program. We try and keep it as cheap as possible.
Yes.
So just send me an email, any questions, I'll help you out as much as I can.
Yes, and obviously you're working with people all over the world because it's the internet. This is the 21st century, and you are based in the UK, but that's why you've got this great website, so that you can work with people via Skype or whatever, long distance. Lewis, you know, you so clearly have a genuine desire to really help people at a very deep level, and I guess it's no coincidence that your website is called Deep Healing Space. And you're very passionate about this. You're very knowledgeable too, and because you're still a young guy, that's the thing. So I didn't say your age because it's a little bit pertinent, but you're still a young guy, and you've already you've come so far, and you've understood so much. And so you've gone really from being a practitioner, I think, to being a healer, which is amazing. And honestly, your work is just amazing. Thanks a lot for being here today.
Well, and thanks for having me, Lloyd. I'm very much appreciate it, and thanks for everything that you do as well. It's a real beautiful thing to see. The amount of people that you've affected is astounding. So thanks a lot.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I really do. Thank you, listener, for attending today. If you're looking for solutions to deal with EMFs and their effect on your health, this interview and all my previous interviews are available in the EMF Experts Solutions Club with full transcripts. I've interviewed dozens of scientists, electrical engineers, medical doctors, alternative health practitioners on this question, and they've shared some unique insights and solutions. Details are on my website. In the next episode, I'll be interviewing another expert, so watch your inbox for details. My name is Lloyd Burrell from electricsense.com. Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.